it's good people and it's under strange conditions. So I named my art show this year Art in the Time of Cholera, because we've all been going through what we've been going through. And so it kind of felt fitting to name it that. So this year, I have all my work from the last, minus a number of commissions and a couple of paintings I sold, I have all my work from the last 16 months or so up on the walls. And the way I've put it up on the walls is I've done it chronologically. So the last year, late spring, I did that Garneau piece there, which is sold. I have that skyline there. I have that third one that's on the back wall, which is called Tiffany's, because this place that we're currently sitting in right now, or standing in right now, used to be Tiffany's Bird Shop, and that's how it looked according to a Edmonton Archives photo from the 1970s. And so I felt like paying homage to the building that we're in right now, and that's the way it looked. It was tacky as fuck. But yeah, that's the way it looked there. And then we get over to the other wall here, and then I start my 2020. And I started with like a long piece that was on an upcycled IKEA door, and I moved on. The only thing that's not chronological in this presentation is I have a portrait of Elliott Smith on the wall between the two bars there, between where Dean is spinning excellent music and Philip is serving excellent drinks. I have an Elliott Smith portrait. And the reason it's there is because I more or less started out as a portrait artist. I did portraits more than anything else. I didn't paint landscapes or cityscapes or skylines or any of that kind of stuff. I did portraits. I loved people. I loved being able to like bring out the human off of a piece of wood or off a piece of paper, off a piece of canvas, and make people like instantly be like, oh my god, that looks like a stylized photograph kind of thing, right? Before Photoshop was a thing. And so that Elliott Smith belongs, I believe, between the first two on this wall chronologically, but I left it over on that wall simply because it was the only portrait I did this year. And the only reason I did a portrait this year at all was because I love doing portraits, and sometimes I get caught up in making pieces and I fall in love with an idea, and when I'm 2/3 done a piece, I have an idea for the next piece, and so I immediately go into the next piece as soon as I'm done that piece. But at some point during January or February, I was just like, oh, I miss doing portraits so much. And so then I was listening to a Spotify playlist I had, and an Elliott Smith song came on. I'm just like, who's that guy? He made good tunes. And he's no longer with us, so I decided to pay like kind of a memorial to Elliott Smith. So he's over there, but he would have fit in between my spring skyline and my bubble skyline. So because tonight's event is called Art in the Time of Cholera, I'm going to talk about how my art changed so much because of COVID times. Everybody's life changed, right? Raise your hand if your life changed in some way because of COVID times. Yeah? Is that not consensus? I'm pretty sure it's consensus. Like, everybody's life changed somewhat because of COVID times, right? And so it's really interesting because last year at my art show, I had a similar kind of a showing the progression of how the year started and how the year ended. And I think I did chronologically last year, just to kind of show how one idea fed into another, and another idea fed into another, and then it just kind of went along. This year's art changed a lot because of the COVID shutdown, because we couldn't put it on any shows here for months and months and months and months. But if you see that one piece that's framed, it's the second from the end there. I did kind of it's the bubbles one with like the circle sky and some like kind of stylized colors. The one before that is kind of like a paper sky. And there was a couple that I sold last year that had patterned skies, but they were painted on. There was like, I think 3 paintings I sold last year. They were skies, like city skylines with skies that were a pattern of some kind, but I painted them on. And I thought, you know what I want to do is I want to do like a meticulous paper sky, some kind of a pattern out of paper. But then I also thought, Christ, that's going to take a lot of time.
And also wine.
And wine, yes. I kept track of how much wine I drank while I did a couple of the pieces, and then I just like threw out the paper after, because it was, my liver is telling me to stop doing art. It's saying like, that's enough wine. That's a lot, calm down. But so I had these painted pattern skies, and I thought, I really want to do a paper sky, but how do I set aside, I estimated 60 to 100 hours to like do a paper sky. And then I was in Kingston visiting my partner there when COVID happened and everything shut down, and I got back and I'm like, Christ, what do I do now? I'm like, well, if you ever want to spend a lot of time cutting hexagons or octagons or triangles, now is the time to spend a lot of time doing a meticulous skyline. So what happened there was, instead of trying to like produce art and capture what I was thinking in my head, I thought, I've got nothing but time now to like sit down and spend hours and hours and hours. So the first one I did was the third one on this wall there. The hexagon is called New Eyes, which is sold. But I decided to do hexagons first for my pattern sky. And it took me easily 80 hours to cut out all the shapes and glue all the shapes and make it look like that. There's a lot of National Geographic images there for buildings and stuff. But it took a long time, like a good 80 hours to do that. And I'm like, yeah, I predicted that it was going to take a lot of time, and it did. But it was also the time where I could take this time to just, there's nothing else going on. COVID's a built-in excuse to say, like, can't go out tonight. I had a cough yesterday. I smoke a lot, so I always have a COVID excuse. Woke up with a cough. So yeah, I did that New Eyes one. I'm like, yes, this was awesome. Like, it was meticulous, it took a lot of time, it turned out fabulously, and so then I'm like, okay, change the pattern of the sky. And so then I started thinking about like different kind of like patterns that I liked. And I came up with a couple of ideas, brainstorming ideas, and some of them sounded really good at the time, and then when I started like working with the papers and making them like, this isn't what I want to do, this isn't, like, it was a good idea in my head when, after like 2 or 3 bottles of wine and going to bed, I'm like, yeah, it's gonna be awesome. Tomorrow we're gonna start on that first thing. But then like the next day you start like putting it together, you're like, well, this looks like cheesy, like comic book art, or it looks erratic and chaotic, and it doesn't look like a cohesive piece. And so then I really wanted to do, after the hexagons, I wanted to do the octagon piece, but octagons don't go together, so I ended up coming up with a pattern that did. And that one was well over 80 hours of cutting paper and gluing paper, which was awesome. And then I tortured myself by saying, like, do another hexagon one, but bigger. Do it bigger. And so those other 2 pieces there, the 2 previous ones are 18 inches by 18 inches, which is a nice size. I really like that size. I always do, or I almost always do 18 inches by 18 inches or 20 by 20. I really like that size, but then I thought, I mean, bigger. The amount of time going from an 18-inch by 18-inch piece to a 24 by 24 is way more. It's almost double. Are we have any mathematicians in the house? Yeah, it's pretty much double the amount of work. But I had a vision in mind, and I really like the way it turned out. And I have prints of that one, but I have prints of the yellow one there in both the square, and also I got the people who do the prints to crop it into a horizontal, crop a little off the top, a off the bottom, so there's a couple of different views of it. And that one took a long time. But being a sucker for punishment, I went on to The Devil is in the Details, which is there's over 1,200 triangles hand cut in that, and well over 2,000 pieces of paper in that piece. But I had a vision to do like a fractal sky, and so I worked on that one a lot, and I really like the way it turned out. And then I moved on to circles because angles and straight lines weren't hard enough. This last one right here is a work in progress. I have about 20 more hours left to finish that one off, but I thought I would bring it out just to show kind of like a progress piece, like to take a look at something that's still a little bit raw and hasn't got all the details and everything figured out yet. There's 20 hours left in that one, and there's a lot of work to be done in that piece. And so it'll look quite different by the time it's all completed. But I brought that one out just to show kind of a one that was a little more raw and rough, so you could see before it gets the resin, before it gets all its lines, what it looks like, right? So this year was crazy. Last year, I remember I went through some family drama, and a close friend of mine said, "Man, 2019 is gonna suck for you. It's going to suck for you. But 2020 is going to be amazing." If you want to blame someone for what we're all going through in 2020, I have his name and number. It's in the text. I think he jinxed it for all of us because 2020 was not amazing. But what 2020 did do was give me time to step back, take time, and focus and do my art exactly how I wanted it to look. Whereas at other times, you would be like, okay, this is how I want it to look, and this is how I'm going to do it. But also kind of under the gun a little bit, like knowing that if I don't make an art piece every 3 months, I'm not making money for myself, and I'm not feeding myself, right? So instead of like worrying about like making sure I have this piece done and as good as I can, it gave me a real chance to step back and say, how do I want this to look? Like, how do I want my work to be? If it takes 120, 130, 140 hours to do this piece, so be it. But I want it to look exactly the way it should when I'm done the piece, right? And I throw the resin on it, right? So that's what this year was about, and it taught me a lot. So I ended up with 4 finished pieces during COVID, and one 80, 90, 95% completed. But I was really excited. I did a few commissions in between this year that took up some time. But I was really excited this year because I was able to get back the pieces that I'd sold. Because this year I kept the contact information, where last year the ones that I'd sold, they disappeared and I had no idea who bought them. And so it felt like there was gaps in my art show last year. This year I was able to get all the pieces that I was very proud of and put them up there and show you kind of a journey of the last 16 months minus a couple of commissions and stuff like that. So I really appreciate you coming out and looking at the work, and we'll see what 2021 has in store, but I've definitely got a number of projects in the works, sketched out and ready to go. And so next year might be even more nutty. Who knows? Thank you. Sorry, are there any questions?
I think Liz has
I think it's a Malbec.
Yeah, could you, can you speak to this, is there a significance to the imagery used in the devil is in the details?
Oh, yeah. A lot of my pieces that are mixed media and have a lot of paper in them, I incorporate a few different things into them, and they're kind of focused things. So in a few of them I have some indigenous art, particularly in The Devil is in the Details, where the burial ground is right next to the Rossdale plant. I have a group of indigenous people that was taken from a National Geographic of people that were dispossessed of land. And so I took like a family portrait of people who were dispossessed of land, put it in there and put the trees around them. Instead of putting the buildings and the what are those like? It's like concrete and power planty looking shit. I ended up putting a group of indigenous people and surrounding by trees and foliage. And the other thing I put in a lot is stamps. I don't know why, but when I did an artery piece for Philip in like 2014, it was a picture of the back of the artery with the red door where you could come in, and there was gate posters always like stapled to the wall outside there, and I couldn't decide what I wanted to do for gate posters, whether I wanted to do something that looked like the gate posters, but then I looked at the shows that were in the picture and I'm like, who wants to memorialize that band? So I ended up using stamps as the gate posters, and I've kept on a number of these pieces using stamps as buildings and kind of hidden in there. And then the other thing would be religious iconography. I use a lot of saints and yeah, like icons. Like one of my bridges there, if you look very closely beneath the Walterdale, you'll see God, Adam, and Eve, like surrounded by white wires holding up a suspension bridge, or is this? It looks like a suspension bridge. I'll go with that. But yeah, and I grew up in a religious home, religious background, and stuff like that, and have moved on since then. But it's always been kind of a part of something I've really liked is the imagery from it, even though I don't hold anything else. Well, I don't even hold that sacred, but like I enjoy the aesthetic of it. So I put a lot of like kind of religious iconography into the building, stamps, and then indigenous art as well, because we are on stolen lands. So those things make their way into each of the pieces, and I hope that answers the question. Yeah. Right. And paper.
I have a question.
Yes.
In terms of the headspace you have to get into when you're meticulously cutting out tiny little triangles, and when you say 80 hours, there's 24 hours in a day. If I was cutting paper non-stop all day, I'd probably lose my mind. So the Malbec, was it Malbec? Sure.
Right now, for sure.
Habit times.
So getting into the headspace, like
Yeah.
what keeps you like, your hands are blistering, how do you keep, what's the focus, where's the mentality when you're cutting thousands of pieces of paper?
Yeah. So like for the triangles, I had I made myself a template, like a square template, and I drew a square, and then I would cut out the square with scissors, and then I would take a ruler and I would like make an X through the square, and then I would cut that with scissors, and then it would go into my little jar
Okay.
of triangles. And so it would take like 30 seconds to a minute to cut a square into triangles. And yeah, it went a lot slower than I'd imagined it would. So it was